you ready?
Yep.
All right. 1, 2, 3.
Thanks for joining me. We are live. It is Thursday, February 13th, 2020. Lots to talk about on the program today. We're going to be doing some deep dives on a number of very serious topics. Quick overview. In topic A, we'll be discussing the habit that is more deadly, drastically more deadly than the thing you've been hearing about so much, the coronavirus. Something 1,000 times more deadly than the coronavirus related to habits. In topic B, we'll be looking at the future of habits, especially when it comes to wearable technology and artificial intelligence. In topic C, the big business of creating bad habits in you, how companies are profiting off of you by turning your bad habits into gold. I'll be doing a review of a fantastic new book out that you probably haven't heard about, The Age of Addiction. Plus, we'll be looking at other top news stories of the day. All that and more, plus your comments, your questions. We'll be talking about a little bit of an ongoing debate going on right now on my TikTok channel related to the video I posted earlier there today. But thanks so much for joining us. If this is your first time, I'm TJ Walker. I am a personal development expert. I teach people how to have better habits in all aspects of their life, including communication, public speaking, but habits that can relate to any other sphere in life too. We are broadcasting to you live today from about 20 different platforms, everything from TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, you name it. We are the Instagram, Periscope, we are there. So whether this is your first time or you're a regular here, we really appreciate you showing up. Thanks so much for spending your time, and buckle up because we're ready for a big, big show. Okay, let's dive right into topic A. The habit 1,000 times deadlier than the coronavirus. Coronavirus information is everywhere. Lots of panic. People afraid to even leave their homes, sometimes in countries far away from any place where anyone has seen an outbreak. And certainly this is a serious epidemic. I don't in any way mean to diminish the importance and the severity of the epidemic of the coronavirus, but there is another illness that is decimating people at dramatically higher rates. So far, the coronavirus has killed more than 1,000 people, which is a substantial number. But there's another disease that is killing many, many, many thousands before breakfast every day around the world. I am talking about obesity. Now, you've heard me and others talk about obesity a lot lately. Here's more news that just came in. This is courtesy of Jane Brody, the personal health columnist for the New York Times. She's done a deep dive on new research reported in the New England Journal of Medicine. And this is even more shocking, but predictions are that by 2030, nearly 1 in 2 adults in the United States will be obese. 1 in 2. Folks, there are more than 300 million Americans. We're 1/3 of a billion people, and half of them are going to be obese by the year 2030, according to very serious, credible medical experts. So what does that have to do with the coronavirus? Here's my point. We worry, we obsess over something we see in the news. It could be Ebola virus a couple of years ago, SARS 17 years ago, and these things are real problems. But there is a far bigger problem, a much more deadly problem right in front of us in our own homes, in our kitchens, in our cabinets. And it is what we are gorging ourselves on to create obesity. Because the problem with obesity is not just that a fashion editor doesn't think you're slim and beautiful. That's not the problem with obesity. The problem with obesity is you die substantially earlier than you would if you were at your normal body weight. Once you have reached the stage of obesity, you're dramatically increasing your odds of dying of a heart attack, dying of a stroke, of getting all sorts of other illnesses, of having hypertension, of having your legs amputated because your diabetes have progressed. This is a horrific, horrific disease, and yet it's like a fish asking what's water. We're so surrounded by it. We live in it. It doesn't even get noticed anymore. You can look at old advertisements and commercials for the fat man, the fat lady of the circus from 50, 60, 80, 100 years ago, and today it looks like a completely normal person. I'm not condoning mocking fat people and putting them in circuses, don't get me wrong, but my point is we have mainstreamed this idea that it's perfectly acceptable to be wildly overweight. We're not talking about a couple pounds here. Obesity is a severe, severe stage of being overweight, where it automatically causes a whole host of problems. Now, here's the kicker, though. Apparently, it's not enough to be obese. Being obese is the new normal. Now, by 2030, health experts recommend or predict that 1 in 4 Americans will be severely obese. Severely obese. Folks, it kills. Why are we suddenly so obsessed about a virus around the world where probably no one you know, no one you've ever met has contracted the disease? And for those of you in China and parts of the world where you have family members, I don't mean in any way to be insensitive, but all of us know people who've seen their lives dramatically shorten because of obesity. I mean, I have a good childhood friend of mine, Brian, I won't mention his last name, but a childhood friend who just always liked to eat. He was always overweight as a kid, and at the time, that was a rarity. Growing up in the late 60s and the 70s in Charlotte, North Carolina, he was kind of the only really heavy person I knew. Now, I was friends with him. We were the same Cub Scout troop. He was a wonderful guy. And I remember we had kind of a reunion with a bunch of friends from my elementary school 20 years later. We're all in our mid-30s at this point, and we have a big weekend in the Florida Keys. And again, great guy, wonderful guy, but I remember him eating like an entire box of donuts as a snack and as a breakfast, thinking, now this is kind of crazy. And at the time, he was obese. Folks, I'm not mentioning him by name, and that's not even necessarily his name. But here's the thing, only a few years later, he just died, taking a shower, and I don't know if he's had an aneurysm or a heart attack or whatever, but his system just couldn't take it. Now, folks, we can die at any age, and I may get run over tomorrow, but you dramatically increase your chances of dying when you are severely obese. And it's around us everywhere. I want to share with you some of the excerpts from this column that I think are so important. A prestigious team of medical scientists has projected that by 2030, nearly 1 in 2 adults will be obese and nearly 1 in 4 severely obese. The estimates are thought to be particularly reliable as the team corrected for current underestimates of weight given by individuals in national surveys. That's right, people lie when you ask them about their weight. In as many as 29 states, the prevalence of obesity will exceed 50%, with no state having less than 35% of residents who are obese. That's about no state with fewer than 35% of citizens being obese. I mean, this is profound. If a foreign country came to us and said, we're going to put germs in the air and reduce half your population, 10 years out of the lifespan of half your population, we would wage war. We would probably wage nuclear war on that country. And yet, because it's diffuse, because it's coming from a lot of places, we just ignore it. We act like the coronavirus is the biggest threat, and it could grow as a threat. But right now, the coronavirus is a hypothetical threat to most people. The obesity threat is a real threat. It is killing people every single day. World Health experts estimate that a couple of million people die every single year because of obesity. So folks, this is real. And here's the thing about obesity. You can't necessarily control if you have contracted a virus. Sometimes it's simply bad luck. You inhale something, you weren't doing anything remotely dangerous or out of the ordinary. Obesity really is different. There are some controls. I'm not saying it's easy, but there are some controls. Namely, not gorging yourself on sugar and fat and salt and processed foods all day long. Namely, eating real food. Namely, not eating portion sizes that have 200, 300, 400% of the amount of calories your body needs to fuel itself on a daily basis. And it all relates to habits, which is why we're here today, why I'm talking about it, and why I think that collectively, together, we have to give this some thought. This idea of, oh, well, it's genetics, I'm big boned, and people need to lighten up, a few extra pounds isn't that. That's killing us. That attitude is absolutely killing us. And this article goes into some detail about that mentality, quoting people saying, well, it's genetics. The author points out quite rightly that genetics weren't any different 30 years ago and 40 years ago, and yet the rate of obesity was minuscule 30 or 40 years ago compared to today. What's different? Habits about what we put in our mouth. That's the biggest factor. There are other habits about less activity because we're staring at our phone all day long, and a lot of people are not getting as much exercise as they used to. But the main factors driving obesity comes down to two habits: eating lots of horrifically nutritionally bad food for us, number one. Number two, portion sizes that have gone absolutely crazy. I mean, you can eat healthy food and be obese. It's harder to, but you could eat nothing but healthy food. But if you're eating 6 meals a day, or 3 meals a day and 3 snacks a day, and your caloric consumption is 6,000 calories a day, and you're not a full-time wrestler or football player, you're going to become obese. It's simply a function of habits. And at some point, we're going to have to shake our family and friends. It's a delicate issue because you don't want to be seen. I don't want to be seen as someone picking on someone or bullying or fat shaming. I don't approve of anyone who is calling people nasty names and trying to make someone feel bad. So I'm against fat shaming too. But I do think it is a shame that half of America and a good part of the world is going to become obese and die sometimes 5, 10, 15, sometimes 20 years prematurely because of what they eat. I think that's a real shame. I don't know how else you can look at that. There's no delicate way. And it's fun and easy to talk about, oh, aren't those people on the other side of the world bad or weird because they ate a bat, and let's get hysterical, let's all go out and buy masks. Well, it turns out we do need a mask. We need a mask to cover our mouths 23 hours a day so we're not stuffing our faces every second of the day, not with viruses, but with too much food. Here's another interesting finding in this report that did jump out at me. It's talking about snacks, and that essentially, here's the quote from one of the researchers: people are snacking throughout the day. Snacking is the normal thing to do in the United States. In France, you never see anyone eating on a bus. The times I've been to France, that is true, and you rarely see obese people. I haven't been there in the last couple of years, but you rarely see obese people in France. And these are people who eat a lot of chocolate, drink a lot of wine, eat foie gras, but they're eating real food for the most part. It's very rare to walk down the streets of France, forget the bus, and seeing someone eating a giant bag of potato chips and a 32-ounce cola. And that's why, in general, they're a lot less obese than people in the United States. Now, obesity is affecting countries pretty much everywhere in the world, except for people who are still mired in extreme poverty and drought and famine. So it's become a worldwide epidemic. But here in the United States in particular, there is a habit of snacking. And I have to confess, I used to snack. I love to snack. Hey, it's mid-morning. Let's get a chocolate muffin. Hey, it's the afternoon. Let's find a candy bar. It's 11:30. Lunch isn't for an hour. Let's eat a bagel. Not because I was particularly hungry, but because it feels good to eat. And tasty food feels good. You know what doesn't feel good? Having your leg amputated because you're so obese, you've cut off your own circulation, you have diabetes, and your body is killing itself. That's what doesn't feel good. And at some point, we are going to have to, as a society, systematically analyze our daily habits that are creating this. And it's complex. There are serious public policy issues that we as individuals can't necessarily wave a magic wand. As individuals, we do have tremendous amounts of control over what we put in our own body. Now, one of the common suggestions is that, well, TJ, you're being unfair and insensitive because in poor urban areas, there are so-called food deserts. So the only thing for people to eat is processed fast food, and the stores there don't have fresh produce. Some of that is true, there's no doubt. But you know what's even less expensive than colas and soft drinks and fruit juice in an inner city convenience store? Water. Water is less expensive, and there is zero sugar put into the water. So there's absolutely nothing preventing the poorest of Americans from switching what they drink to water. And other than Flint, Michigan, the water is incredibly clean in the United States, by and large. You don't need to buy bottled water. That is an absolute waste of money. The water in every municipal system in the country is tested daily. So you can't just use the excuse of, oh, I'm poor, so I have to eat 6 Big Macs a day from McDonald's. Well, you don't. And even when you are in places that don't have the greatest produce and the greatest choices for food and the stores nearest to you, there's still choice within that. You still have choice about the portion size. You still have relative choice. You may have frozen vegetables that aren't that tasty and aren't that nutritious, but compared to more corn dogs covered with double layers of cheese and bacon, the frozen broccoli is going to be much, much better for you. And again, I get back to, you can always drink water rather than soft drinks with sugar. That alone could make the difference between being obese and a normal range of weight. If you currently drink 3, 4, 5 soft drinks a day with all that sugar, just switching to water could make the difference in saving your life and not becoming obese. And it's time as a society we start looking at that. Now, this is a controversial subject. I realize that, and I want to hear from you. What do you think this is a 2-part question. How are we going to get people to take obesity seriously? I don't think most people do. Number 2, what are we going to do to conquer this disease? We have so many medical experts right now spending around-the-clock time, energy, effort, and money trying to beat the coronavirus, and I applaud that. But what is it going to take to really get the full attention of us as individuals, Americans, citizens of the world, governments, to stop this epidemic of obesity? People so worried about population explosion in past decades. We may get to the point where if human beings are just all so wildly obese, it may be impossible to reproduce because we can't get out of bed. We can't even go meet someone to reproduce if current trends continue. And I apologize for sounding like sort of a habits version of an Alex Jones, an alarmist. But I believe there's nothing I'm saying here that is factually incorrect. I'm not making stuff up to scare you. You know, I was scared a few years ago. I stepped on a scale, and I wasn't technically obese, but I was about that far away. I tipped the scales at 217. And I decided enough is enough. And I don't have any more willpower than anyone else, but I changed my habits. I stopped snacking. I didn't starve myself. In fact, I didn't skip a meal. In fact, I've never skipped a single breakfast, lunch, or dinner in my life. You don't have to do starvation diets to not be obese. The biggest way most people become not obese is to not eat lots and lots and lots of junk food and portion sizes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times bigger than they need. Yeah, I understand there can be thyroid conditions, metabolism issues, but again, talk to any scientist. Any single scientist who really knows about genetics will tell you there's nothing genetically different about human beings today versus 50, 60, 70 years ago when obesity was extraordinarily rare. What's different is now food is plentiful, food is cheap, food is everywhere, and food is technologically, algorithmically designed to trigger dopamine in our brains, to give us excitement, to give us pleasure. That is what is different. And modern society has made it easier and easier not to have to walk anywhere, not to have to do manual labor. And hey, I don't really love manual labor, so I like labor-saving devices too. But something's got to change. We went from an old system where most people had to walk a tremendous amount every day and do hard manual labor just to survive, where food was expensive, sugar was extremely rare, and people ate at most 2-3 meals a day of enough calories to sustain them, to now where people don't have to do any physical labor or exertion throughout the day. In fact, you could just sit in your bed all day long and have food delivered and make a living typing on a computer. But our physical needs for fuel have gone down, 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 and yet our availability of getting more food, faster food, tastier food, cheaper food, delivered right to us without getting out of bed, that's gone up, up, up. You put the two together and it spells death in the form of obesity. So I want to know from you, what can we do? I have suggestions. We talk about this, health habits on a daily basis here on this program. And we'll be coming to some of your comments. And I see Super's Bunny has written in, I love potato chips, but I avoid bad food. And you know what? I love potato chips. Everybody loves potato chips. That's why they're so effective a drug. They're so great at delivering that salt. And yes, there's even sugar in potato chips, the fat, the grease, the processed potato. And that's why, as Lay's says in their old ad, nobody can eat just one. They're highly addictive. You want to eat, eat, eat until the bag is empty. And another difference, bags used to be this big. Bags are now this big. And humans don't differentiate. Once we start, we just keep eating. So, Super Rush, thanks so much for participating. Dried beans, I don't know if I eat a lot of dried beans, but I certainly do like beans when they're cooked and, I guess, moist. And they're certainly much more filling. They give you a strong sense of being full, and there's the protein and nutrients in it. So, yes, beans are excellent, excellent food. I see a number of, Alberto has joined us on TikTok, and I want to share some of the debate going on TikTok on the video I posted on this very topic earlier today in just a moment. But first, let's check in with some of our friends and family on Facebook. See that Sai has joined us. Good evening, Sai. Peggy is there saying hello. And another name that's not being translated, and forgive me, I do need to become fluent in Arabic at some point, but I'm not. I think it's an Arabic name, saying, yes, you're right. Well, thank you. And by the way, it's okay not to agree with me. We can agree to disagree in an amicable, friendly way. No one's shouting anyone down. There's no flame wars here. Let's switch over to our friends on YouTube, Rashid Cullum has joined us. So, Rashid, thank you for joining us on YouTube today. Appreciate that. I want to share with you a few of the comments that I am getting on my TikTok video earlier today. Some of them were positive. User 496 says, at least someone dares to be truthful. Well, thanks a lot. Shelley puts, I don't think that's contagious. I was making the point that we should really be worried a lot more about obesity than the virus that's going on right now. Here's the thing, Shelley. A lot of medical experts and social scientists think that obesity actually is contagious. So much research shows that your weight ends up being close to the weight of your friends. Your eating patterns become similar to the eating patterns of your friends. So there is a social contagion. It might not be a pathogen through the air that leaves another person's body and goes in your nose or your mouth, but it is basically a metaphorical pathogen that goes from someone else's brain and actions into your eyes and your brain, and then it becomes infected. Because let's face it, we've all been in situations, I know I have. You're at a party, perhaps watching a social event. You don't normally eat chips and dip and drink beer and have soda pop, but everyone else is. It seems like a special occasion, and all of a sudden you're eating lots of chips and corn chips and Doritos and potato chips and fried chicken wings and all sorts of stuff that's frankly garbage for you because of the social environment. So that's why, Shelley, I'm going to politely and respectfully disagree. I think you're correct. It's not contagious in the same way that the coronavirus is contagious, but it is contagious nonetheless. Now, Kalini writes on TikTok today, we can worry about both, Guy, implying that I'm having my priorities wrong. Well, here's the thing. We have seen headline after headline, big blaring headlines, sometimes 2, 3 headlines on major news sites, TV news. And I'm not saying it's not real news, but when someone comes out with a story like I did today, reading from the New York Times, that was buried at the bottom of the page, or D4, the personal health section. It's not treated as anything really serious. It doesn't get blaring headlines. It doesn't have people saying, wow, I'm really going to change my behavior. That's my concern about the coronavirus. People see that and they think, wow, I'm going to change my behavior. I'm not going to go to the mall now. I may not put my children on a bus. I am going to buy a mask. I'm going to cancel a vacation. People hear a news story about the coronavirus, and again, the coronavirus seems to be horrible, and I hope we can catch it. But people are planning to change behaviors. They're planning on changing habits because of information they see in the news that's signaling this is a huge, 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 big, dramatic story. React, and we do. And yet something that kills infinitely more people, not hypothetically, but it's been doing it today, yesterday, last week, last month, last year, obesity is slaughtering, it's decimating huge swaths of humanity. And you don't see people look at a front page story about obesity and say, oh, wow, this is really scary. Let me throw away all the junk food in my cabinet. Let me actually try to walk more than 500 steps a day. Why is it we as human beings react to one theoretical risk that may actually be tiny for any one of us, especially in most of the world, and yet a risk that is huge, a risk that is gigantic, a risk that affects almost every family in America, whether it's your extended family, nuclear family or extended family, and we just look the other way. Nope, don't see anything, nothing to talk about here, and you may have 5 family members who've just been diagnosed with diabetes in the last 3 years, and 2 of them have had legs amputated, one's had a heart attack, and it looks like none of them are going to reach the age of 60. Why is it we are like this? That's part of what I'm interested in exploring more deeply. Not to criticize anyone, not to make anyone feel bad, but to save lives, to make us all live longer, healthier lives. That's my purpose for talking about this. I want to share with you some other comments from the discussion on the TikTok forum today, where I posted a 30-second version of this subject. Eagles writes, processed food is definitely the enemy, but more and more people can't afford to eat well. Fresh food is more expensive than processed. Problematic. It is a problem. There's no doubt about it. But as I mentioned earlier, water is always going to be cheaper, with very few exceptions. But in the United States anyway, water is always going to be safer and cheaper than soft drinks. Boom. That's, for a lot of people in a given week, that's thousands of calories right there. Doesn't cost a penny. In fact, it saves you money. Part of it is portion control. Now, I realize it's harder to do. You can get one small McDonald's cheeseburger, a small fries, a small milkshake, and that is going to be still dramatically more calories than you need for any one meal. And if you do that regularly, you still might get obese. But at some point, if you want to eat healthier than you are currently, you can, regardless of circumstance. I'm not saying it's easy, but you know what else isn't easy? Seeing your leg cut off. You know what else isn't easy? Not getting to see your grandchildren or your children because you had a heart attack because you were obese. None of this stuff is easy. And I'm trying to figure out what the solution is. Before we can come up with solutions, we do have to be honest with ourselves about what actual problems are. Okay, now here's someone who doesn't really agree with my reasoning. Flippin' for alive, says TJ, oranges and apples, bud, implying I'm making a false comparison. If you want to play that game, what about cancer? Well, yes, I do think we should be concerned about cancer. Guess what is one factor that dramatically increases your odds of getting cancer? Obesity. If you have high levels of obesity or are severely obese, you've dramatically increased your odds of getting cancer. Now, cancer is sort of an umbrella term that covers so many different problems and illnesses that affect different body parts. Certainly people should be concerned about cancer, and cancer does get a lot of time. But the thing that's different about obesity is, sometimes people just get pancreatic cancer. It's the bad luck of the genetic lottery. There's certain cancers that come up. Lung cancer is something that has gotten a lot of attention, rightfully so. And the incidence of lung cancer in the United States and a lot of places have plummeted because people focused on the cause. The leading cause of lung cancer was smoking. So when people put a spotlight on, here's the problem, we got to convince everyone to stop doing this. And I'm old enough to remember, I was young enough at the time in the 70s, people still smoked on planes. You go to restaurants, there was smoke everywhere. I was considered sort of obnoxious for asking people not to smoke around me and coughing. It's a different era, especially growing up in North Carolina. But to me, the cancer model, the lung cancer model, is exactly what we should be doing when it comes to obesity. Lung cancer rates were skyrocketing. The scientists looked at it, and the issue was, in fact, smoking. And once that was realized, public service campaigns, government officials, broadcasters, everyone kind of pitched in, and we basically stigmatized smoking. We basically said, don't do it. It wasn't said in so many words, but it was basically said, you're a bad person if you smoke around other people, and you're breaking the law, and you're going to be arrested. Now, I'm not suggesting we arrest people for eating a bag of Doritos. I realize that's going too far. I'm not suggesting that. But the basic way we reduced rates of lung cancer was by identifying the problem, identifying the cause of the problem, smoking, and then trying to get people to do less of that habit. But when it comes to obesity, there's a lot of different factors. I'm not suggesting in any way it's not complex. But it does come down primarily to people eating too much food and too much bad food that has no nutritional value, but has lots of salt, sugar, chemicals, flavors added to make them addictive. And until we realize that, it's a ticking time bomb. And it might not get you. I hope it doesn't get you. I hope it doesn't get close family members of yours. But if we don't start dealing with this, it's just going to consume society after society and generation after generation. And forgive me, folks, our friends on TikTok, I made a small blunder because I'm actually using my phone to connect with you. And I forgot to turn my phone off, so when someone called, it disconnected us. So thanks so much for joining back. I want to hear your opinions. First of all, what do you think can be done at a societal level and an individual level and in your own family to stop what scientists are now telling us is inevitable, this inevitability of obesity? And according to this latest research, not just obesity, but for 25% of Americans, severe obesity. That's a huge, huge problem. What do you think? Weigh in. You post your comments, your questions. You can disagree with me. You can say, TJ, you're crazy. Coronavirus is what we should all be focusing on. There's nothing that can be done about obesity. I would have a dissenting opinion there, but your opinions get heard. So take a second, tell me what you think on this topic. Do you agree with me that perhaps, yes, media attention should be given to coronavirus, but it's disproportionate compared to the far bigger risk? I think headlines like this one that was buried about half of Americans becoming obese in 2030, that should be headline news, above the fold, and the top thing on any website every day for a month. That should be what is screaming out at us on CNN hour after hour after hour. Not a plane crash. I mean, the safest place you'll ever be in your life is on a plane. And yeah, once a year, 1 or 2 or 3 plane crashes occur and 700 people die. And I feel sorry for them. But why is that more important than 2 million people dying from obesity? I know why it's better TV. It's better TV because you can see that one plane in flames and you can see an explosion. It's better TV. You can't show 2 million people around the world in various stages of decay and in hospital beds dying. You can't do that, so it's bad TV. But it doesn't make it less real. Okay, it's time for you to weigh in. What do you think can be done? Do you agree with my assessment that people are spending relatively too much time and effort and energy focusing on coronavirus when the far bigger risk, certainly for every American and most people in the world, is this disease of thinking we have to feed our faces all day long, every day, with sugary treats? Post your comments. Go to Instagram, go to Facebook, go to YouTube, go to Periscope, TikTok, wherever you are, feel free to join in. I would love to hear from you. You're watching The Habit Influencer. I'm TJ Walker. I'm your host. This is the program where every day we talk about habits, how to build good habits, how to build stronger habits so that you can lead a fulfilled life. That's what we're all about. Rashid writes in and had said hello earlier. Great. And also says your Udemy courses are nice. Well, thanks. I appreciate that. Those of you who are just tuning in for the first time, I do teach online personal development courses on how to be more creative, how to have life purpose, how to manage your own time, how to have more focus, and also public speaking and media training skills. They're on a lot of different platforms. Udemy is probably the most well-known one. So if you are looking to go deeper on any of the subjects we talk about here on the program, typically I have a course that deals with that subject in a much more in-depth way, and the courses are very inexpensive and great bargains. But Rashid, I'm glad you are in fact enjoying that course. Speaking of courses, spotlight on today's course. The course of the day is the Complete Creativity course Unleash Your Innovation Now. There's a link to it in the show notes. You get a very nice discount, but it's all about how you can put more creativity in your life on a daily basis, and ideally come up with creative ideas together how we can solve this obesity epidemic for society, but also for ourselves. So take a look at that in the show notes. We'll be back in just 1 minute. I'm TJ Walker, back after this quick break.
Yeah, slow day for comments.
Now, is anyone on today, or did are there some days when there's, the up live goes from 400 to 0, or? And my friends on TikTok, you get to hear us during the break. We'll be back, joined by everyone else shortly.
Yeah, I had a ton of views today. It's a slow day.
Do you have a video ready to go if I want to go to a video?
Not. I can tell it when we're faster.
Okay. Well, I'll wait till the second hour. Okay, let's hop back in.
All right. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and you're live.
We're back. I'm TJ Walker. This is The Habit Influencer. Thanks so much for joining us today. Wanted to go to the mail. We always give attention to anyone who writes in, whether you're doing it live on the show in any of the social media platforms, or if you post comments on any of the student forums where I have my courses. All of my students get their questions answered live here too. I had a question come in earlier today, before the show started. This is from one of my online students. Linus writes in and says, "Hello, I need motivation." I guess you could say that's not even really a question. That's really a statement. So, Linus, you're not alone. If you feel adrift in life, if you feel like you're just going through the motions, well, many people feel that way. It's common, it's normal to feel that way. But here's the point. Other habit motivation experts have said this. This is not an original idea on my part. But you already have motivation. You have motivation for whatever it is you do. If you stay in bed, then you're motivated to stay in bed. If you're watching trash TV or kitten videos all day long, you are in a sense motivated to watch trash TV or kitten videos all day long, more so than writing a great novel or starting a business. So you're already motivated. The question is, how do you create an alignment between the motivation that you have that will help you realize other aspirations you have and are consistent with your self-identity? If your self-identity is, I'm a smart, hardworking, successful person who will be successful and deserves to be successful, but you are unemployed or stuck in a job that you don't like, and you spend every waking moment eating junk food, gaining weight, learning nothing, numbing your mind with mindless entertainment or pills or drugs or booze or pot or whatever it is, then something's not in alignment. You want to be successful, you want to accomplish a lot, perhaps you want to make enough money to travel the world or support a cause or build a home or have a family. That's your goal. Your aspirations are to be successful in work or create something of value or write a best-selling book. But what you're doing on a daily basis is just barely keeping your head above water. Well, then it's not a problem of having motivation. It's a matter of how can you change what you're focusing on to motivate you to do something that you're going to feel good about. Presumably, you don't feel good about what you're doing, because everyone's motivated to do something all day long, even if it's just sitting in bed and sleeping 20 hours a day. My recommendation, start small. Figure out what is it you really want to do in life, or what is it you enjoy. You might not know your big purpose in life, but think about times in your life when you did enjoy things. You may go back to kindergarten and think, wow, I was never happier than when I was drawing and painting and finger painting. I'm not suggesting you're going to become rich and famous as a finger painter, but there's nothing preventing you. You can be a 50-year-old adult and you can go to an arts and crafts store and buy finger paint and finger paint for 2 minutes a day before you go to work or before you go pick up your family. There's nothing preventing you from doing that. And here's what I can guarantee you. The sheer act of painting and bringing back those memories as a kid and creating something that you kind of like or you think is interesting, there'll be spillover effects in a positive way. And the fact that you're creating something here just for yourself, not suggesting you try to sell your finger painting online or try to get it in a gallery or sell it to a museum. I'm saying just do it for yourself. Start small. Maybe you only spend a minute a day doing some kind of finger painting, some kind of drawing, but make it a habit and tell yourself, that's my habit. I'm going to do a painting every day, 7 days a week. And what you'll notice after a couple of weeks is ideas will come to you faster. It'll be easier. And you'll feel better about yourself. You'll feel like you have nothing else today. I made a painting. Much better than simply going through life passively consuming everyone else's creation, which is how most people go through life. So I would urge you, start small. You may have no interest in painting, but maybe you loved sports and athletics as a kid, and now you're 35, out of shape, and you spend all your time in a car or a bus, and you're really out of shape. And because of that, you have less energy, and because of that, your free time, you just stay at home watching TV. That's something that happens to a lot of people, especially those who say they're not motivated. Start small. How about just walking around the block? Once, before dinner, after dinner in the evening, maybe before you go to work or school. I'm not saying you've got to walk a marathon. You don't have to walk 20,000 steps. Just do something out of the ordinary so you can check a box and say, you know what? At least I did that. And depending on where you live, whether you walk around a block or you tell yourself you walk for 5 minutes, just doing something that changes your status quo. If you feel like your life now is in a rut and you're not motivated, start easy with little things. And walking for 5 minutes a day, it's not going to cure you of obesity. It's not going to make you magically a star performer at your company and get lots of promotions. But it's going to make you feel better about yourself. And it's also going to send a message to your brain, Linus, that, hey, I motivated myself to walk an extra 5 minutes a day that I didn't used to. I decided that was a goal. I motivated myself to do it. I did it. I've now done it every day for a week, a month, maybe 3 months. This empowers you and makes it easier for you to find motivation to do other things that you want to do, perhaps bigger things. You do enough little things like a little drawing for 30 seconds a day, a walk around the block. You string enough of those things together, they become little victories, little motivational victories. You've motivated yourself to do these little things. And you start to bundle them up, they can become something big. If you find you give yourself a whole lot of little tasks and you accomplish it, it makes it much easier to then find the motivation for the big task. I give myself a whole lot of easy wins every day. Some of the things on my daily checklist of habits, just to do 20 jumping jacks a day. Any child can do that. Anyone who's not physically in an infirm position can generally do 20 jumping jacks. It's not hard. It takes about 20 seconds, but I do it every day. And when I'm done, I give myself a little hand pump up. Yeah, did it. Nailed it. Winner. And I have a whole lot of little things like that. You know, I did 7 pull-ups today. But by doing all these little things, it also sends a message to my brain and my heart and everything else that, TJ, when you want to do something, you can motivate yourself to do it. So there's a whole lot of easy things I find motivation to do because it's frankly so easy. Then when I put my sights on something really difficult, it's easier to do because I have this muscle memory telling myself I am the sort of person who can accomplish things. I'm the sort of person who can find motivation to do it on a regular basis. Because, as I say, so many of the goals I give myself every day are really, really easy. I do stretching for about 20 seconds a day. You know, my legs crossed, I bend down, I put my leg up, I hold my leg and pull it back like that. I only do it for about 30 seconds, but I do it every single day. I run every day on the treadmill, but only for 60 seconds. I have numerous things on my to-do list every day, and by deciding I want to do it, holding myself accountable, and then doing it, that supercharges my bank of motivation that I can then use on other things. I mean, some of my things are as simple as read one joke a day. How hard is that? If that were my only habit goal for the day, you could say I'm pretty lazy. But it's one of many. But the sheer act of reading a joke a day puts me in a better mood, lets me accomplish one thing else. And by doing things like that, it also makes it easier to do things not as difficult as starting a whole new company or a big show like this, but something else I've done ever since I started doing more little habits. I had some medium-sized habits, like write at least 500 words a day on my professional area of expertise and interest. So every day for months, 7 days a week, I write at least 500 words a day on habits. And you might not have a particular desire to be a writer, Linus, but whatever your subject is, whatever your passion is, if you tell yourself you're going to write about it, you're also telling yourself you got to think about it. If you're thinking about it, you're more likely to read about it. If you're reading about some passion of yours, it generally means you've crowded out the time you have on your calendar to watch completely mindless entertainment video. And a little caveat here, I'm not some killjoy. I'm not suggesting you can't watch entertainment video. I have literally on my calendar every night from 8 to 9 p.m. after family time and family dinner to actually watch an entertaining video. So I'm not telling you you can't enjoy some mindless entertainment fun. But it's a big difference between 1 hour a day versus what happens to a lot of people who have in fact lost their motivation and spend all of their time watching video, whether it's on TikTok, whether it is on YouTube, whether it's on Netflix. Now there's good and bad video content anywhere and everywhere, but at some point, if you're not specifically motivated to try to improve yourself, the easy thing to do is to sit back and watch mindless, silly tripe. Yeah, TED Talks gets a lot of viewers, but the average Adam Sandler movie on Netflix probably has about 1 billion more views than the most popular TED Talk. So let's get real here. Let's not kid ourselves by saying, well, I'm not that motivated today. Let me learn something on YouTube. And then before you know it, you're watching cat videos or duck videos or whatever the thing is that gets you laughing or chuckling. So Linus, I wish I could help you more. Now, what I do have for you, Linus, is I have a course on finding your life purpose. And by the way, we don't run any ads during this show. We're on for 2 hours every day, and there are some expenses involved with putting on this show. But I hope you don't mind. Our main revenue driver for this show are sales of my course. So I'm going to try to be not too obnoxious. I'm not going to be like an infomercial hammering it every 6 minutes with a new 30-second ad. It's not like network TV where 8 minutes of every half hour or of every hour is going to be commercials. But every once in a while, I will weave in something if I think it'll be helpful to someone who's written or called or responded and to the larger audience. So I would recommend my course, complete course on finding your life purpose. And you can find that on the Udemy platform and a lot of most other major reputable online learning platforms. If you just type in my name plus life purpose, you'll find there. Just go to Google and type that in, and you will, in fact, find it. So, Linus, thank you so much for your questions. Or really wasn't a question. It was just sharing with us that you're looking for motivation. And I'm bending down for 1 second. I just accidentally dropped my papers, and we don't have a whole team of people scurrying around tending to me. And we don't break for commercials every 5 minutes, so I couldn't wait for a commercial break. I just wanted to give you a quick update on what's coming up in hour 2 of the show. And I appreciate you listening to me on this coronavirus versus obesity issue, because to me, that does sum up big important issues that relate to habits that are going on in society, and that also relate to what we as individuals do at the personal level. And it just does not get enough attention. So thanks for letting me basically spend the whole hour on that topic today. I do appreciate that. But hour 2, we're going to be looking at different issues, although they often connect and are interrelated. In hour 2, I'll be talking about the future of habits and habit control, specifically the use of technology and artificial intelligence. Right now, we all use technology to control our habits. Unfortunately, the number one way most of us use technology for habits is we let our cell phone control us. We let Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos and Netflix CEO and all the other, the Snapchat CEOs control us by pinging us, notifying us, sending us emails, messages, text, saying, hey, look at me, give your attention here. And once we're there, our technology delivers us ads saying, hey, here's a coupon for 80% off your next Frappuccino at Starbucks. So technology is already playing a huge, huge role in shaping our daily habits. The question is, when is it going to start working in a positive way to help us? And I've got some very specific thoughts. It's a subject that is near and dear to my heart. That's topic B in hour 2. We'll also be playing one of our upcoming videos, produced videos that go out on YouTube and Facebook, asking for your opinion and for you to grade it and give suggestions on how you think it can be improved. But we'll be giving you sort of the heads up. You will see it first. So that's one of the benefits, the perks of watching this show live, is you're going to see our upcoming videos. You're going to get a sneak peek, a premiere, before anyone else in the world gets to see them. So you're not going to want to go too far away in hour 2. I'll also be giving you a more detailed review of this book, The Age of Addiction, How Bad Habits Became Big Business by David Courtwright. Not a book you've seen a lot of because he's not a social media star, which will make sense after I tell you more of what the book is about. And in topic C, in hour 2, I'll be looking at how big business makes money off of teaching us horrible habits. So all that and more in hour 2, plus your comments, your questions, your thoughts. And by the way, this is a forum for you too. I come prepared, ready to talk about highly specific habits every single day. But there's nothing preventing you from introducing a habit you wish to discuss or that you want feedback on, or you may want to simply deliver your own opinions and analysis about a habit and how you solve the particular problem. So this is not just a one-way talk show host where I'm lecturing down to you. This is a community where you have equal say. So you can post your comments, whether you're on TikTok, Instagram, other places, and you can also just make a video of your comments, post it on our Facebook page, and we'll play you unedited. So we're not going to be screening you out. So please keep that in mind. All that and more in hour 2. I'm TJ Walker, the Habit Influencer. We will be back at 3 minutes past the hour. And my friends on Instagram. Host TJ Walker. Thanks for joining me today. We are live. It is Thursday, February 13th, 2020. In the news as it relates to habits. This on the website Ladders, and it talks about 8 public speaking habits that you should avoid at all costs. Now, this is a subject near and dear to my heart since I've been a public speaking trainer for 35 years. So I always like to share other people's opinions. And then I want to get your sense of what you think are some of the worst blunders, worst mistakes, and habits people make when they are giving speeches. So tip number 1, swaying and fidgeting. Certainly if you're doing something like this, or sometimes you see people playing with their ring on their finger, that can be distracting. It can be noticed. According to one of the experts at ladders.com, swaying is the true mark of a novice speaker. You want to stand with feet planted firmly on the ground and then walk with purpose and in a way that complements your speech. I agree with that assessment. Now, a lot of times I disagree with other so-called experts. There are some experts who say your feet should be planted firmly, shoulder width apart, and then stay there the whole time. I think that's horrible advice. But I agree with this expert interviewed by Ladders, Dr. Fisk, who says, walk purposefully. Yes, when you walk purposefully around the room, it's much more interesting to people, and it's easier for them to pay attention and not get bored. This next point is a little bit abstract, not connecting the dots. It's important to reiterate your core message and walk your audience through the points that you're making. Not reminding people where you're at in the structure of your talk is a surefire way to lose them. Now, they certainly should not be confused at any one point. But I don't agree that it's a good practice to tell them what you're going to tell them, and tell them what you told them. Because if you're saying that stuff, your ideas in a boring, straightforward, abstract, linear way, people won't remember it. Far more effective to package every important point in a compelling story, and that way people can even connect their own dots. It makes sense. Another big blunder people make, using and as transitions. That is a huge problem for some people. Now, I have a slight contrarian view. Everyone says and occasionally. It's only a problem if the ums are so obvious, people start noticing and counting. In my experience, when people practice their own speech on video several times, they may notice a couple of ums, and it freaks them out. No one else in the room even noticed. So if you have just a couple of ums, don't worry about it. The fewer ums and uhs, the better. The advice in this article is to just pause, and that is the correct advice. You should pause. The next one, saying the phrase kind of. It does seem sloppy, imprecise, sort of wishy-washy. I don't know that that is something I would put up there in the top 8 or top 10 weaknesses in speeches or top blunders or bad habits of a speech. Next one they point out, running off the stage after your talk. This is a big problem. I've seen it. I'm sure you've seen it. Someone's given a presentation. Maybe you thought it was okay. Maybe you thought it was interesting. And the second they're done, they do something like this. And that's it. Any questions? And they're just so in a hurry to get off the stage because they're uncomfortable. Now, if you're uncomfortable giving a speech, I understand. If you're not in the habit of giving speeches every day or a couple of times a week, it's normal to be nervous. But you don't want to show your nervousness to people. That is not helpful at all. And the way to not seem nervous is when you finish your presentation, look at people, smile, pause for just a second, take a half a step back. Now I'm happy to take your questions. If you end that way, you'll really strike people as confident, comfortable, commanding. You'll leave them with a better feeling in the pit of their stomach about you, your capabilities, your expertise. Now, here's where we get controversial. Distracting body language. They quote a so-called expert that says 80% of our communication is nonverbal. Thus, our body language on stage can make or break us. Hands crossed over the chest, hands in pockets are a big no-no. These movements indicate disinterest and even defensiveness. Well, I have a couple of problems with this. 80% of your communication is not necessarily nonverbal. Because if that were true, I could be speaking to you now in Russian. As long as I have good body movement, you'd understand 80% of what I'm saying. And if you don't speak Russian, that's obviously nonsense. You would understand zero of it. To me, it's not about giving an exact percentage of your body language versus your voice versus your words. It's they all have to connect. If one thing is off, nothing works. You can have perfect body language. If you're speaking in a different language, it won't matter. On the other hand, you can be speaking in someone's native language using perfect words, but if you're speaking in such a low energy and looking down all the time in such a low volume they can't hear you, no communication will take place. So I think it does a disservice when people start saying 80%, or a lot of people like to misquote a famous study from UCLA saying 93% of communication is body language and voice. It's not true, and that's not what the research found. So I have to quibble with that. Now, my other minor quibble is this expert says these movements indicate disinterest and even defensiveness. Yes, being like this can make you look defensive. It doesn't mean disinterest, because disinterest means you are unbiased. Forgive me an indulgence, it's a minor pet peeve, but so many people, even in reputable media outlets like the New York Times, misuse the word disinterest. Disinterest does not mean you're not interested in something. Disinterest, to say someone is disinterested, means they are behaving like a judge in an unbiased way. So forgive me for seeming a little peevish there. So that is one of the suggestions. What do you think are the biggest blunders people make? Another one listed here is using complicated language. Choosing your language to sound fancy is such a bad habit. Have you ever tried to say all the university level words you know so you sound smart in a presentation? I agree with this one. It is a very bad habit. You want to use the simplest words, possible words you use in normal conversation. The final one on this list, ineffective slideshows. This is kind of obvious. How many times have we been in presentations where someone is doing a PowerPoint, lots of bullet points, lots of text, you can't even read it, they're droning on and on, they're reading, and what do? We check our cell phones and see what's going on TikTok and Facebook and Instagram. So yes, that is clearly it. If I had to really list what I think are the biggest mistakes people make, the worst habits they make when it comes to presentations, it's a different list. For starters, the biggest habit people have is not really thinking about in advance what do they want their audience to do after listening to them. That's the first bad habit people get into. The second bad habit, and it flows from the first bad habit, is they don't really think about what are the handful of messages that will motivate the audience to do what I want. They have too many facts, too many numbers, too many slides, and it's just a chaotic, boring mess. The third really horrific habit people have is not practicing on video. if you practice your speech on video, you'll know what you're getting. It'll be obvious to you if you're boring or you don't make sense. You'll know if your hands are fidgeting, if you're doing things like this. So that's typically something that doesn't show up on other people's lists, but it's really number one on my list. The habit of not practicing your speech on video is a horrific habit. And finally, for big speeches, not testing your speech in advance. You got to give a big speech to 50 important prospects on Thursday. Find a couple colleagues Tuesday, give them your speech. When you're done, ask them every message they remember. Ask them every story they remember. Ask them every slide they remember. Don't stop practicing your speech until your sample audience can tell you the messages they remember that you wanted them to. That's a bad habit. Now, you don't see that on many other lists. I had to learn that one the hard way. But when you do have the habit of testing your speech in advance, it solves all of these other problems. What do you think are the worst habits when it comes to people giving a speech or a presentation? Weigh in now. You can say on TikTok, I see Period Pooh has joined us. Period, thanks for joining us. We're talking about habits today, as always. Specifically, public speaking habits. Let's check in with our friends on YouTube. And let's see. I see Rashid writes, please update Podcast Addict. I didn't see what's above that referencing. Rashid was the one who was nice enough to compliment me on one of my Udemy courses. Says, please don't remove this video from YouTube. I need to watch this later. And also saying, please update Podcast Addict. I'm not quite sure what you mean by Podcast Addict, but you know what? We are listening to you, Rashid. Typically, after we do a live broadcast, the 2-hour show, we have taken them down from YouTube and down from Facebook, because when I've looked at the best habits, the best practices advocated by people who are more successful than I am and social media stars, they typically say you're better off with just one high-quality video per day on YouTube or Facebook. If you have too many, you will dilute your audience. You'll send negative messages to the algorithm, because when you put up the second one, no one will watch the first one, and YouTube or Facebook will think that your channel is not interesting. So for the first 6 weeks of this show, we did it what most people say you're supposed to do, just limit to one, and we have put edited, shorter 7 to 10 minute videos up. And then we've removed this live broadcast. But Rashid, we've heard other people mention this, so we're going to change. As of today, the live show, and I'm not promising it'll be like this forever, but for now, and certainly in the next month or so, if you come into the show and you get sidetracked or a call happens and you missed it and you want to watch it, the show will be on the same platform you watched it on. Certainly it will be on YouTube. It will be on Facebook. So Rashid, we are listening to you. We are responding, and we are changing. When I started this with my colleague Marceau, we readily admitted to ourselves and to you, we don't know everything about how to communicate as effectively as we can to as many people in the world, to put a spotlight on good habits and how to improve habits. So we've been experimenting. And that's why we've been experimenting with adding more and more platforms like UpLive and TikTok and Periscope, but also what to put where and when. So we do listen to every comment. We don't always make a change like that. In this case, it just so happened that we decided to make the change basically at the same time you asked for it, Rashid, but it never hurts to ask. Smart City writes, and Marcel, I'm going to need you to scroll down because there's an arrow covering the text. Okay, Smart City says, I'm finalizing my YouTube studio to get a great background like you. Well, thanks so much. And let me go back and get into some nitty-gritty. This is my actual living room. I am not standing in my living room at the moment. I'm standing on the first floor of my house in an old, very large closet that was converted into a TV studio. This is where I make online courses, do interviews with TV networks, and then come to you live every day on this live stream show. But this is just an old TV. This is, I'm guessing, maybe a 50-inch TV or 48-inch TV. It's not that big. This is a video loop playing behind me. For most of my training videos, I'm in the same room, but I have a white PowerPoint screen behind me, and it just keeps a sort of a cleaner, simpler training look. We put this because a lot of people said, look warmer, friendlier, more inviting, bringing people into your home. And we did, in fact, do some of the early shows when we were in the pre-launch preview stage in November and December from my actual living room. And Marceau well remembers that one day, and I had the fire going, and I set off the fire alarm right in the middle of the show. So it's always more complicated for any video production when you're doing something outside of a set studio. With the beauty of what I have now, it's not as fancy as an NBC News or the BBC, but I do have a professional quality Canon camera mounted on my wall at eye level, about 9 feet away. I have professional lights mounted on the wall, and then a few other just extra table lights pointed at me. So I have 5 lights on me now, so my face is lit, but I'm standing just an inch in front of a television screen with this video backdrop. I prefer this over a green chroma key, because if there's a green chroma key, you can then edit in any background you want, but it's harder to light. It's easier to get that sort of fuzzy look around the edge of your body, and it requires either a switcher or some kind of post-production. We try to keep things simple and easy. So what it looks like now is what you're seeing. There's no extra production done on the backdrop. I think for most people, that's the easiest thing to do. Either have something set up in your office where there's a neat backdrop, it could be your bookshelves, or have a TV screen, and then you can put any image or video loop behind you, and you can make it look like you're anywhere. So that would be my recommendation. Speaking of the technical side and the video and how things look, here's your chance to give a critique. One of the benefits of you watching this show live is you get to see things before anyone else in the world does. So we're going to preview now. This is a video that will be up in the next week on our YouTube, on our sort of anchor YouTube channel, as well as our Facebook channel and a lot of other media. So Marceau, what are we going to show them today? What are we previewing?
First one is strong habits of people, strong habits for your finances.
Okay, so this is a video that has not been seen. Yeah, this is one we've not shown, correctly, Marceau?
I think it's an older video, like one of our first few videos, but I don't think it's been seen.
Okay, so this is one from the archives that we may be bringing back in the next week to sort of give it second weight. But I do want your opinion of it, to tell me what you like, what you don't like on both the style and the substance. And Marceau, I've got to stop showing my age and saying run the tape, roll the tape, because it's not tape. I'm not Warner Wolf. It's not 1979, and people don't use videotape anymore. So I'll just say play the video. Why don't we do that? Habits of the financially wealthy. Anytime you hear someone toss out a phrase like that, you see a headline like that, watch out. It's likely to be clickbait. It's likely to be someone trying to sell you something to take your money. Well, let me tell you right now, I don't want your money, at least not right now as it relates to this. I want you to just listen, think, and share. There are certain habits that the financially wealthy do differently. There's one habit in particular that I think does not get enough attention. You don't need me to tell you the financially wealthy save money every month. You don't need me to tell you a lot of financially wealthy invest in real estate and in assets that are creating income. Robert Kiyosaki has done a fantastic job of telling people that for decades. Where I think people really don't understand the core strength of the financially wealthy is how much money the financially wealthy invest back in themselves. Now, historically, this was done by lots of fancy degrees at places like Harvard and Stanford and Columbia, Oxford. Historically, this was done by jetting across the world to Davos and various conferences to hear great lecturers. But increasingly, what the wealthy are doing are exactly what anyone can do. In fact, what you're doing right now. And that is to educate themselves. Their attitude towards education is not simply get a degree, check the box, and then you're set for life. No. The really wealthy people in the world, for the most part, unless they are just born billionaires and they don't care, the people who create wealth and build wealth and want to see it grow continually invest in themselves. This can be in the form of books, e-books, listening to podcasts. Sometimes it takes no money at all to simply listen to a podcast. Once you have the infrastructure of a cell phone, it doesn't require a lot of money. It could be an expensive coaching program or mentorship program or a virtual MBA. It could be that, but it doesn't have to be. But unlike a lot of people, the wealthy don't just continue to learn for the sake of learning. That's a part of what they do, and they love to learn. But a part of what they do also is to learn more about what they are best at, so they can continue to get better and better and better. And they can continue to charge more in whatever it is they do. I don't mean to suggest that all wealthy people are consultants billing by the hour. It could be that they are real estate investors. It could be that they are angel investors in startups, high-tech startups. But when they study more and more and more, sometimes an angel investor might look at 1,000 business plans before saying yes to one. The 999 you said no to were an essential part of your education to enable you to know which one to say yes to. In my experience, when I'm around people who are extraordinarily wealthy, yes, they have a good time. And some of my clients have 400-foot yachts and own baseball teams, but everything isn't fun and games all the time. They do have fun. They have intense fun. You look at someone like Richard Branson, he seems to have a lot of fun on islands and ballooning, but they're always learning. Bill Gates prides himself in reading a couple of very intense, long, detailed books every single week. It's not that he needs to make more money. He's already, depending on the day, one of the top 2 or top 5 wealthiest people in the world. But he's doing it to get even better at what he does. Now he's in the stage of his life where he's trying to give away his money to make the maximum impact on his money. So he wants to make more, not for himself, but for humanity. And I realize some people don't like him, and you may think that's a puff piece for him. I'm not trying to shill for Bill Gates, but he's clearly not doing all this reading to just make more money for himself. So my number one challenge to you would be to figure out how can you allocate more time every single day to learn more about some specific skill you have. It may be broadly learning something, but what can you do? In my own life, I try to consume books 3 different ways every single way. I try to read 1 book every single day on Blinks or InstaRead, and these are short abridged books. I realize some people may think that's cheating, but I read at least 1 book on that each day. I also listen to an abridged audiobook every single day. And I also read a paper book every single day. I don't finish an entire paper book every single day. In fact, I'll be talking to you in a minute about this book, Tiny Habits, the latest book that's really made a splash in the whole world of habits. And I'm halfway through this. I'm really taking my time because there's so many good nuggets here. I'll be sharing with you some of those nuggets shortly. So that is really the number one thing I think that's different about the wealthy when it comes to how they think, how it relates to their own finances. They are constantly reinvesting in themselves, their knowledge, their ability to learn, their ability to stay at a higher level of the economic food chain. We live in an era where artificial intelligence is destroying job after job after job. It's not just taxi drivers who've lost their jobs to the artificial intelligence running Uber, and those drivers are then putting them out of business. It's happening in industry after industry. Easy stuff becomes a commodity. Easy skills, easy jobs are either going to vanish because of computers, or the compensation gets lower and lower and lower every year because there's more competition coming in from computers and artificial intelligence. You don't suffer from that if you're constantly trying to figure out how to do harder things, more difficult things. So that is my number one challenge to you if you aspire to be wealthy, is to figure out how can you continue to learn more and more and more every day in as wide a path as possible, but also in a way that helps you specialize. I like to read all kinds of things. It could be news about NFL coaches, and I don't even care about football. It could be stories about cooking. It could be anything, but I'm trying to get better and better and better at one particularly hard skill right now. I like to challenge myself, test myself. Right now, the biggest challenge in my life is I'm trying to do a daily live stream show about personal development on more than a dozen platforms all at the same time all over the world. So you may be watching me today on YouTube. You may be watching on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. This is a relatively hard thing to do. There are very few people doing personal development shows live for 2 hours a day on a gazillion platforms. Doesn't mean that I'm special or I deserve a reward for it, but at least I'm trying. I'm trying to do something that technically, there's a lot of technical issues. It's hard to do. And this particular skill is not going to be taken over by a computer anytime soon. At some point it could be, but right now I'm far enough ahead that it can't be taken over by a computer, and that is why I am doing it. I'm trying to stay ahead of the curve. That is the number one secret of the financially wealthy. I'll be sharing with you later tips today, other sources, other blogs, other habit resources, what the wealthy are doing. But that's my take. I'd like to hear from you. Again, I'm TJ Walker. I'm the Habit Influencer. This is the Habit Influencer Show. And the origin of that name is not that I am the all-knowing guru and I'm going to lay my hands on you and make you perfect. No. The reason we call this Habit Influencer is I'm trying to teach myself and you how to influence your own habits. That's what it's about. So much of my methodology is about you figuring out the lifestyle you want. What are your dreams? What are your aspirations? And then really isolating what are the daily habits that will lead you to your ultimate goals. And then what are the techniques that will help you reach your goals? That's what it's all about. Habit Influencer, I'm TJ Walker. What did you think of that last segment? And don't just say, oh, you liked it. That doesn't help us. I want to know, what, if anything, did you like? What did you like about the graphics, the sound, the reverb, the B-roll, and what did you think of the message? Tell us what you like and you don't like. Marcel and I are still trying to figure this out. Now, I've been making videos at some level or another since 1975. And no, I'm not 100 years old. My first one was when I was 12 years old. But we don't have all the ins and outs figured out yet. So we're still trying to refine it and make it better. So if you have any opinions on that last prepared video, that was not a live segment, please let us know. Number of comments coming in. Happy to be joined by Know My Drone on TikTok, commenting on the topic from our first hour regarding obesity. yes, cost more for health care than eating healthy. Many people have made the case that you shouldn't expect people who live in poorer areas, inner city areas where there's only 7-Elevens and there's no fresh produce to eat healthy. They're so-called food deserts. So that is an issue, but Know My Drone on TikTok points out it costs a lot more to have hospitalization and to have to hire someone to carry you around once your leg has been amputated if you have a lifelong addiction to food and you're now obese and you have diabetes. So it does cost a lot more to have bad health. That's ultimately the biggest cost. And of course, the biggest price of all is losing your life or losing 10 good years you could have had. Or maybe you died 10 years earlier, but your last 10 years were miserable because you were bedridden because you were so obese and you couldn't walk or go play with your grandchildren. That's one of the great problems. Now, cost is also an issue because in city after city and even country after country, lawmakers who've tried to address this problem of obesity have put taxes on soft drinks and other high sugary foods. And what they found is it works. When you make something cost more, people then want less of it. And you can, in fact, help people become healthier. The criticism of these laws sometimes has been, it's unfair to poor people because they're disproportionately buying these soft drinks. I have a lot of sympathy for poor people, but not for that argument, because if you need a few extra pennies on a tax for your Coke not to buy Coke, great. Just drink water. You'll save even more money to buy healthier, real food, and you won't have all that sugar going in your body. So thanks so much for stopping by, Know Thy Drone. I appreciate it. Let's hop over and check in with some of our friends on YouTube. There was a comment or two there, Marceau. And Rashid writes in, can you please do a course on memory improvement? Now, Rashid, I am not, I'll say yet, an expert on memory. I am studying memory. I do like to read books on memory. I may at some point do a course on memory, but I don't have one yet. I can tell you that most psychologists and most experts on the brain would say we are highly susceptible to what we tell ourselves. What our brains hear us say about ourselves becomes reality. And I've been guilty about this. I've been one of those who said, I'm horrible at names, I'm not good at names. If you tell yourself you're bad at remembering names, you're horrible at names, your brain hears that, it processes it, and at some point it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So what I do now every day is I tell myself in my Selfie Speak audio and in my media program and in my text checklist every day, TJ, you have a great memory and you remember everyone's name. Now, I've been doing that for about 3 months, and when I do go out into trainings and meeting people, I am finding it helps. Social situations. If you tell yourself you have a good memory, it won't automatically make you have a perfect memory, but it will improve it. Now, you also asked specifically, how do you remember a long speech? Now, this is something I do know a lot about, because that is why so many people give awful speeches. They say, TJ, I can't possibly memorize this 30-minute speech, and I want to get it just right. So, of course, I have to sit here and read my speech word for word, blah, 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 or read the bullet points word for word. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Horrible habit. I should have mentioned that as the number one bad habit when we did the segment earlier today. Reading a speech is the worst thing you can ever do, unless you are a skilled actor or broadcaster using a teleprompter and you really know what you're doing. Nothing worse than amateurs using a teleprompter. So what is the secret? The secret is using notes when you speak. But notes, when I'm giving a speech, an hour-long speech, I'll typically have one sheet of paper folded over like this, and I'll have 2, 3, 4 words in very large font, bullet points, and I'll have a bullet point for every major point, a bullet point for the story for that point, and if I have 1 or 2 facts, I'll do it. But it doesn't go deeper than about 20, because I only have 5 main points. And that's all I need for an hour speech. And I can glance down at it occasionally No one ever has any idea I'm using notes. Because it's on a single sheet of paper, no one sees me touching it and picking it up. Now, I do hold notes when I'm doing this show, but for most of you watching, it's below what you see. A little different for our friends on TikTok. You have a different angle of me, so you can see me holding notes. But I'm not reading in detail. I may scoop down and share an excerpt or a quote from it. Don't put pressure on yourself to memorize a speech. It's such an awful idea for so many reasons. Even if you're successful at memorizing it, it is going to sound like, hello, parents, teachers, and my fellow citizens of Uzbekistan. It's going to sound memorized and canned and phony, and it's going to put people to sleep unless you are a professionally trained actor, and that's hard to do. So I recommend just having a handful of bullet points. And if you tell yourself, well, TJ, I can't possibly condense my speech down to a few bullet points, that tells me you have a serious problem. The problem is not your memory. The problem is you're not using enough judgment about what is truly important to put into your speech. The biggest problem most people have is they try to, and I did mention this earlier today, they try to cram way too many messages, facts, numbers in every speech. So the solution is not to get better at memorizing it. The solution is to use judgment. What is it that you truly need to put a spotlight on to tell your audience? And then flesh it out by giving examples, stories, and case studies. That is so much more powerful. So again, our goal is not to memorize a speech. Our goal is to really communicate with an audience, to move them to take action. That's our goal. Memorizing a speech might seem like a helpful tactic to do that, but it doesn't really advance your goal. It's a tactic, I find, that helps people with a very, very flawed speech in the first place, delivering it in a flawed way. But if I do come up with a course on memory, believe me, I'll be alerting you and all the other regulars here first before anyone else. So thanks so much for your comments and questions and suggestions for courses. Now, you just did something there I appreciate, and I'll put this open to any of you, whether you're on TikTok, Instagram. If you have a suggestion for a topic you'd like to see a more in-depth online course on, let me know, because I am making new courses all the time. I have more than 140 courses on Udemy and other platforms around the world, but there's plenty of topics I've not yet hit at all. One topic that I've not covered in a course yet, but I am going to cover right here, is topic C in our show today, and that is, what is the future of habits and habit control? I believe the future is in technology, specifically wearable technology, specifically digestible and embeddable technology, and artificial intelligence. We'll see more habit control through things like our cell phone. Right now, we're already controlled by our cell phone. Our cell phone controls us by manipulating us against our wishes to do unhealthy things like sit around and watch YouTube videos for hours instead of going out and exercising. And it manipulates us by sending us ads and discount coupons to buy unhealthy food. But I think the future of habit control is going to involve things like putting sensors on our fingers, through our watches, ingesting sensors in our body, sometimes embedding them under the skin so that we can send real-time data to databases where artificial intelligence can analyze it and give us instant feedback. So let's talk about the issue of obesity, for example. Let's say you are an average man in the world, let's say 5'9", your ideal weight is 150 pounds, let's say, and you want to maintain that. How would artificial intelligence and a wearable or ingestible sensor help you? Well, if you know you're 5'9" and you have a certain BMI and your weight is 150 and your target weight is 150, a computer, any database and artificial intelligence program is going to know how many calories you're going to need to sustain your weight. So if you have a sensor in your stomach or somewhere in your body measuring your blood levels, it could, or even in your mouth somehow, it could measure in real time the number of calories you're eating. So if, for example, you need at most 2,500 calories a day, and after breakfast and lunch, you've had 1,900 calories, and now you're at a restaurant, and you had a nice big appetizer, and that was 700 calories. Well, boom, you're at 2,500 calories. You could have a sensor go off and alert you. It could ping your phone. You could feel heat or a vibration on something like an iWatch or a sensor. You could know, okay, as of right now, you're basically going to be gaining weight and adding fat to your body. You've consumed all the calories you need. Now, am I suggesting this should be mandatory? No, I'm not. But do I think that people who care the most about their health, their longevity, their fitness are going to be doing this? Absolutely, because I can tell you I'll be the first one signing up for this. Now, where it gets interesting is the reward mechanism. With every habit, there's typically a reward. You eat a chocolate chip cookie, and there's that incredibly satisfying feel of the consistency of the fat and the texture in your mouth, in your belly. Makes you happy, at least makes me happy. You get that hit of dopamine. You pull a lever at a casino in Las Vegas and you put in a quarter and 50 cents comes back. You get that dopamine hit, oh, I'm a winner. And it's that positive reward that creates the habit. Conversely, you're a child, you touch a lit stove and you get pain, you get a negative reward. You get punished for that action. Pretty soon you figure out, I'm not going to touch a red stove. When it comes to the future of building habits, I think in some ways it's going to be easier than ever to build healthier habits, especially when it comes to diet and food consumption, because if you know exactly how much you're eating, you can't fool yourself. You can go out to a big dinner and say, well, I'm just having a little appetizer, I'm just having a little this, it's a buffet, I'm just taking a little. You can eat 5,000 calories. I know I've done it. You can eat 5,000 calories in one setting at a dinner. And if you had a normal sized meal for breakfast or lunch, you're basically guaranteed to put on fat that day. And you don't have to gain 5 pounds in a meal. Just a few ounces here and there, cumulatively it adds up over the course of a year. You can go from a normal healthy weight to obesity. So that's why I'm so excited about this technology. Now, there have been some companies that claim they do this, and it turns out they really weren't very good. And so there's nothing on the market that I know of. I know that's where all the science is headed. There's no doubt about that. I don't have an interest. I'm not trying to sell you anything. If you're an inventor of one of these things, let me know. I might want to invest with you. But at some point, it's absolutely coming. Now, let's take it a step further. You've said you want to weigh a certain amount. Your body, the science, the database, the artificial intelligence knows how many calories you need to eat to maintain that. Let's say you've gone over it. You could, in theory, program a device, a probe to do something to give you strong negative rewards, to give you a shock, heat, a pinprick feeling. In theory, you could have it secrete some type of substance to make you nauseated. I always forget which is the proper word in that case. You could get sick, and nothing would ruin your appetite at a buffet as much as that slight sensation that you couldn't keep your food down. Now, am I suggesting that everyone needs to be programmed to start vomiting at dinner? No. But it sure seems a lot less intrusive and less painful than stomach stapling and bariatric surgery, and it certainly seems a lot easier on a lifestyle than becoming obese and bedridden and dying 10 or 20 years earlier because of a heart attack or stroke. What else could happen? In theory, you could program some sort of sensor to also give you positive rewards when you do things like exercise. A sensor could be on you detecting after you've run, let's say 30 minutes, and give you some type of hit of dopamine or some minor small positive sensation to reinforce that positive activity. It doesn't have to be all pain and vomiting. This is what I see of the future when it comes to habits. Maybe not for everyone, but for a lot of people, and for how it's going to be used with technology and artificial intelligence. Now, where it gets even more interesting is when insurance companies get a hold of this. Because insurance companies, by definition, want to minimize risk. And they certainly know, they would have the data, the actuarial tables to know that if an individual is of a certain age and they are perfect weight and they can see what this person is ingesting and they can actually see that this person doesn't smoke, then they are going to be able to profitably insure that person for less. Am I saying that's a good policy for society? Because then a lot of poor people might have to pay a lot more money for basic health insurance. I'm not saying that is good at a societal level. I am suggesting that it's coming. Insurance companies are definitely going to do that. That's health insurance. What about life insurance? Imagine you're the CEO of a life insurance company, you want to maximize profit. People will tell you when you're insuring them, oh, I've never smoked a cigarette in my life. Of course. Do I do drugs? No. And when they know the physical is coming, maybe they don't drink or smoke or do drugs for a week leading up to their physical. And then they get their life insurance policy, and they're drinking and smoking and doing all sorts of drugs. Well, if you have a life insurance policy, a life insurance company, and you knew you could tell exactly what individuals are putting in their body, I think a good actuary at a life insurance company would figure out pretty quickly how to make a whole lot of money off of that information. We live in an information economy, and where people can make money off of information, they do. Now, you could make the case that governments and legislatures should make it illegal for insurance companies to do that. I'm sure some would. Is it a good idea, though? I mean, if you know you can get life insurance and health insurance for, let's say, 80% less than the normal rate, and all you have to do is eat a healthy amount of food and not smoke and not do drugs and not drink excessively, are you really losing by that? I would argue that you're winning. Now, this may seem too big brother-ish for you, but it's not the government doing it. It would be an insurance company. These are thorny issues. I don't have the answers to all of them, but what I do try to do is look at where we are today, look at advances and breakthroughs where they are, and connect the dots and see where they are going to plan accordingly and to figure out how can this be used to benefit you and to benefit me. Let's just look at the example of alcohol consumption. Now, according to most medical experts, it is completely healthy and in some cases beneficial for the average woman to drink 1 glass of wine or beer spirits per day, and a glass of vodka, whiskey is defined typically as 1.5 ounces of liquor. And for men with higher body mass and weight, it's typically considered 2 drinks per day. Here's the thing, though. You go to a restaurant in a lot of parts of the world. This has happened to me in the United States, Europe, Africa, Asia. And you go to a nice restaurant and you order a glass of wine. It's not technically, legally, clinically, from a medical standpoint, 1 glass of wine. It's 2 glasses of wine. So many glasses in restaurants these days are gigantic, and they're giving you not 500 milliliters, but 1,000 milliliters. So if you are a woman, for example, and you think, oh, I'm only drinking 1, you're drinking 2. You do that every day, you've had 14 drinks in a week, not 7. If you're a man, you say, well, I'm only having 2. You actually had 4 drinks from a medical standpoint. The beauty of having a sensor embedded in your body that is detecting your blood levels at all time is You wouldn't be able to fool yourself. The portion size, the portion control, or lack thereof from restaurants, from your own self-control, wouldn't matter. You would be able to get an indication of how much alcohol is in your body. I guarantee you, your life insurance company would love to know that. I guarantee you, your health insurance company would love to know that. These are going to be thorny issues. There's going to be huge public policy debates on this. And I don't know if it's going to be in 7 years or 17 years or 30 years, but it's coming. And I predict that for people who want to control their habits and want to have healthy habits, that technology is going to go from where it is today, which I would argue it mostly hurts people in their habits, to being one that empowers them. But you've got to be careful. Governments can take control over it. Other individuals can take control over it. And you could end up feeling like you're living in the Matrix and you're just living someone else's life and you're living in a bubble. I don't want that. I want you to control. And the problem right now with the way technology is disseminated is most of us just react. Oh, here's a nice video in front of us. Oh, Facebook is giving us more of what we want. Oh, this pop-up ad is saying do that. Most of us are bouncing around and reacting and just bopping around. We have no control over what's going on in our own life. We have a habit of giving control to others. I do believe that technology will evolve to the point that for those who truly want to control their habits, the technology will allow them to do it. Many will simply decide that's not what they're interested in. That's my take on the future of habits and technology and artificial intelligence. Thanks for listening. This is, again, admittedly early. These products are not, at least to my knowledge, not on the marketplace, but they are coming. It's never too early to think about how you can use it. I mean, we use technology all the time. If you use your cell phone as an alarm clock, that's using technology to change behavior. You're getting a prompt, that loud sound. The reward you get is you get up on whenever you wanted to and you turn it off. Now, those of you who are regulars know I think it's a horrible idea to ever use alarm clocks. And you need to be going to sleep earlier. But we all use technology already to help us with habits and to give us guidance through our life and to give us prompts. I've become increasingly, I won't say addicted because I don't see any negative, but I love using the stopwatch on my iPhone. I'll say, set alarm in 20 minutes or set alarm for 10 minutes. I love technology, but technology has to be there to serve us. We can't be there just to serve the masters of these technology companies because they're already billionaires. I'm not, at least not yet, it might not ever be. I'm assuming you're not a billionaire, so we don't need to be giving our attention, our time and money, fulfilling the habits that billionaires want us to do. We got to do that for ourselves. Speaking of billions, we're almost out of time, but I did want to put a spotlight on this great new book, The Age of Addiction, How Bad Habits Become Big Business by David Courtwright. He has this phrase called limbic capitalism, and it's all about corporations that basically are making billions of dollars by stimulating this part of our brain where we get dopamine fixes, whether it's, oh, I just posted something on Facebook and I got 7 likes, bing, 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 or I'm playing online video poker and I just won $5. Forget the fact that I lost $200 earlier. It's entire corporation set up to stimulate your brain, to give attention, to give money, to give time, to put food into your mouth. I just want to share with you a brief excerpt. And if you're interested in the book, I've posted a link to the page where you can buy it on Amazon. Again, I'm not an affiliate. I don't get a penny of this. I'm sharing it with you because I think it's truly worthy of your attention. And the author talks about how modern food is designed. The process was algorithmic. Food engineers applied mathematical models to calculate the likeliest combination of ingredients and then validated the results with large-scale testing. Food became pharma, another term for the pharmaceutical industry. New foods were like drugs, emerged through data-driven winnowing. By the 1980s, only 1 in 10 experimental food products made it to national or global markets. The rest washed out in focus groups or regional state trials. And here's what interests me. It's a quote from a Frito-Lay food scientist, Robert Lynn. 90% of it is making you feel good, and feeling good means tasting good. That's what you're getting with pretty much any package, any food that comes in a package, a bag, or a box. It has been specifically, scientifically designed to make you feel good so that you will eat more. And when you're walking past it in the grocery store, you get this cue where, oh, grab this, stick it down your mouth, and you'll get this feel-good reward. You get this response of the reward. So this is a huge part, if not the dominant part, of why we do face a nation and a worldwide epidemic of obesity. So a fascinating read. It's not just a look at food companies. It's a look at everything from Facebook, internet, cell phone, all modern technology companies, going back to gaming and gambling companies. The book only has 3 stars on Amazon, or 3 reviews on Amazon, because the author, I think, practicing what he preaches, is not spending all of his time on social media, building a huge following, trying to get people addicted. And unfortunately, there are a lot of great ideas in this book that I think more people need to think and ponder, because so many of us like to think, well, I don't do heroin and I'm not an alcoholic, I'm fine. Yes, there was a time when there were relatively few addictions just wandering around to grab you. There was a time 40 years ago or so that other than hard drugs like heroin and cocaine, you had risks of things like cigarettes and a few other things, and it was pretty easy to get through life without addiction. Now you can get addicted to free 24-hour-a-day internet video games. You can get addicted to almost free internet gambling. You can get addicted to getting likes on your own Facebook page. And certainly, unlike when I was a kid, you can't even walk into a gas station without being bombarded with thousands of food products that have been genetically engineered, algorithmically tested to give you tremendous pleasure when you put it in your mouth. Because, hey, I'm like you too. You put potato chip in your mouth, it tastes good. So pick up the book or take a look at it on Amazon. I do recommend it. We are out of time today. I'm TJ Walker. Thanks so much for being a part of The Habit Influencer. I'll see you tomorrow. All right, all my friends on TikTok, thanks for joining. We'll see you tomorrow.